Imagine you are the Sultan of Delhi. Congratulations. But here comes the difficult part. You have conquered a huge part of northern India. You have thousands of soldiers to maintain, nobles expecting rewards, governors ruling provinces hundreds of miles away, local rulers who still control villages, and a treasury that definitely isn't infinite. So, tell me, how do you rule such a massive empire? Well, the Delhi Sultans found an answer. And the answer completely changed relationship between taxation, administration, and military. Welcome back to the series. In last episode हमने बात की कि कैसे taxation gradually became decentralized during early medieval period. Land grants अब common हो चुकी हैं और intermediaries have become powerful and local rulers gained greater control over revenue. Now, around the beginning of 13th century, a major political change arrived. It was the Delhi Sultanate. Early sultans faced strong resistance from many indigenous rulers, especially Rajput chiefs. Some were defeated in battle, while others accepted sultan's authority and became the vassals. But here's something interesting. सुल्तान ने हर लोकल रूलर को इमिडिएटली रिप्लेस नहीं किया. कई लोकल रूलर्स जैसे राणा राय अभी भी अपनी ज़मीन को कंट्रोल कर रहे थे, रूल कर रहे थे. वो अपने लोगों से टैक्सेस ले रहे थे जस्ट एज बिफोर. द डिफरेंस वाज दैट दे नाउ एक्नॉलेज्ड the Sultan's supremacy by paying him annual tribute. The amount of tribute that was rarely fixed. It often depended on political circumstances. माने अगर एक राजा टैक्स पे करने से मना करते या become rebellious against sultanate, then military expeditions were launched to restore sultan's authority. So, although new empire has emerged, much of the local administration continued to function through existing rulers. Now think about Sultan's situation. He had conquered territories, but conquering is easier than governing because every empire faces the same question. How do you pay thousands of soldiers? How do you reward the loyal commanders? How do you govern distant provinces? And how do you stop governors from becoming powerful and independent? Well, एक रास्ता ये है कि हम टैक्सेस को कलेक्ट करें दिल्ली में, फिर उसे स्टोर करके रखें रॉयल ट्रेजरी में और फिर पे करें सोल्जर्स को और ऑफिशियल्स को. It sounds simple, except managing such a system across vast medieval empire during that time was very expensive. Surely requires enormous administration effort and supervision. So, sultans needed a much smarter solution. The solution was Iqta system. Instead of paying nobles and military officers regular cash salaries, the sultan assigned them the right to collect revenue from a particular territory. Now that territory was called Iqta, and the officers who managed that territory, Iqta, was called Iqtadar or Mukti. Now, here comes the important part. Muktis ज़मीन को own नहीं करते थे. The land still belonged to the state or say sultan. What actually Muktis got was a temporary right of collecting revenue from the given territory, Iqta, while serving the sultan. In return, he had important responsibilities, like he had to collect land revenues, maintain law and order, administer the assigned territory, and most importantly, maintain troops and supply them whenever Sultan demands. Now, instead of paying army from the treasury, Sultan just linked the military service with revenue collection. Well, it was a practical solution. It reduced the immediate pressure on central treasury as well as administering distant provinces. Although Iqta became the backbone of administration and revenue collection, the land revenue remained the largest source of state's income. Now, not all land was the same. There were Khalisa lands. Those were under the ownership and control of Sultan itself, and revenue from those lands went straight to the royal treasury. Many feudatory Hindu rulers continued governing their territories while paying tribute to the Sultan. Then there comes Iqtas, we talked about. Those lands were assigned to Muqtis for administration and military service. Now there were also Waqf or Inam lands granted to Muslim scholars, saints, mosques, and charitable institutions. Several taxes existed during this period. There comes Kharaj, just the principal land revenue, whose rate varied according to different rulers under different circumstances. Then there is Ushr, which was levied on certain lands cultivated by Muslims, with rates depending partly on irrigation. There is a popular one which is Jizya. It was a poll tax imposed on non-Muslim males, though several category of people were exempted. Then there is Zakat, which was a religious obligation on eligible Muslims, generally calculated as 2.5% of qualifying accumulated wealth according to Islamic laws. Now, the state also earned revenues from custom duties, market taxes, trade and commerce. Now, during wars, Khums governed the distribution of war booty, which was practically loot, with generally one-fifth reserved for the state's treasury and four-fifths distributed among the soldiers who fought in the war. The actual practice sometimes varied. Revenue collection at local level involved officials like muqaddams, patwaris, chaudharis, while higher revenue officials supervised assessment and collection. Now, different sultans introduced their own reforms. For example, Alauddin Khilji strengthened revenue administration and attempted to curb the growing power of intermediaries, increasing direct state control in important regions. So, although basic framework remained similar, taxation itself continued to evolve under different rulers. The answer is yes, but not perfectly. Iqta system helped the Delhi Sultanate, maintaining a large army without constantly paying salaries from the treasury. It allowed Sultan to govern distant territories efficiently, and it created a flexible administration structure suited to a rapidly expanding empire. However, it also had serious weaknesses. Now, the revenue assessment thought that wasn't always fair. Corrupt officials sometimes exploited peasants. Heavy taxation became a burden in several regions. Powerful muktis occasionally became too influential and challenged the central authority. Now, different rulers introduced different policies, which means taxation wasn't exactly uniform in the whole sultanate. So, in other words, the system solved many problems, but it created new ones as well.